Hi, this is Jen, here to do a quick tutorial on watercoloring with distress markers. For my picture today, I'm going to be using the teacup bouquet from Tailored Expressions and watercolor paper, along with a little bit of black pigment ink and black embossing powder right here to make my picture. I'm going to start by quickly stamping and embossing my image. You want to make sure that you get either use a watercolor or a watermark ink or something else that's going to be waterproof. I'm using Brilliance Graphite Black. I'm going to go ahead and stamp that on my watercolor paper. Your watercolor paper is going to have two sides to it. One is a smoother side and one is a rougher side. You probably can't see the difference here, but one will have a little bit of texture, one will be smooth. It's your choice what you want to use. I find it sometimes a little easier to stamp finer images on the smooth side. I'm going to go ahead and stamp my image here. And then I'm going to quickly move it over here and spoon on a little bit of black embossing powder. I'm using a detail embossing powder today. To kind of pick up the fine lines of this stamp. I'm going to use a paintbrush to kind of brush off some of the extra here. Watercolor paper seems to be a little stickier than other types of paper when it comes to embossing powder. So I'm just going to make sure there's no big areas that are filled with embossing powder. I'm just going to hit it with a dry paintbrush and kind of flake some of that off of there. It doesn't have to be perfect because your watercolor or the distress markers will cover a lot of it, but I just want to make sure it's not filling up lots of places that are going to resist the marker ink. Okay, so that's pretty good. One more spot here. Sorry, I know you can't see what I'm doing there. And then I'm going to hit it with my heat gun. This seems to take a little bit of extra time because the watercolor paper is a little thicker. And be really careful not to touch it once you're done because it sometimes has a tendency to smear a little bit because it doesn't dry quite as fast as, or cool off quite as fast as on regular paper. So make sure you get it all. And then if you want to, you can kind of set the back a little bit so it'll uncurl if it curls up a little bit. So there we go. Keep that handy. You might need it when you're painting. It's kind of handy to have one of those around. So then for my image here, you can see I've watercolored one already so that you can see what the finished product's going to look like. I've used some purples, so I used the Dusty Concord and Chip Sapphire for the flowers, and I used a little bit of scattered straw for inside the yellow parts of the flower. The greens, I used 3 greens. I used pine needles, peeled paint, and shabby shutters for the leaves. And then the teacup, I used tumbled glass and broken china. And then for a little bit of extra shadow underneath, I used pumice stone and scattered straw for a little bit of glow around the outside of the picture. It's possible I might have thrown in another color that I didn't catch, but I think that was most of them. So I'm going to start inside the flowers here, and I'm going to start with my Dusty Concord, and I'm going to color straight onto the paper, and then I have my water brush and a paper towel handy, and I'll show you what those are going to be for in just a second. I'm going to go inside my first flower here, and I'm going to kind of quickly fill in the places that are the darkest parts of the flower petal in the center of the flower, like that, with my marker. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my water brush, and you don't want it to be too dry, but I don't want it to be sopping wet, so that's what my paper towel is for. I'm going to use it to kind of blot my my paintbrush, and then I'm going to start kind of in a little bit of a swirly motion, I'm going to begin moving out, activating the marker and moving it away. And I dry my paintbrush pretty frequently just to make sure that I'm not pooling up too much water on this first step. So I'm going to go through here and activate all of that. And then I'm going to move on to another area. I'm not going to do these surrounding petals yet because I want to let those dry first. So I'm going to move on to this one. And watercolor is all about layering up your colors if you want it to look like a true kind of watercolor painting. So you're going to work in sections and then come back to areas that you've already completed. I'm going to activate this and keep going around. You can see I keep going over and kind of drying off my paintbrush. That's because I want to keep my lights pretty light. There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to some of these other petals here. I'm going to start on the insides and work my way out. I like to use a pretty small water brush when I'm doing this just because it seems to fit this kind of an image. I have a few others and I happen to like the smaller ones the best. I don't know, I think I like to work small. It's always kind of been my thing. So keep going. I'm going to go around and finish all of the first round on all the flowers. So I'm going to go through all of those one more time. You can kind of just watch. I'm only going to hit the places that I really want to darken up. I'm not going to do every petal again. Though you could, because it'll give it a little bit more vibrance. The more ink you get on the paper, the more vibrance you'll have with your colors. And sometimes they need a second coat. Okay, so that's finished for that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my chip sapphire, and on the centers of the big violets I'm going to go back through and add a little bit of chip sapphire to kind of separate those petals out and make them a little darker. So I'm going to take my chip sapphire and do the same thing I did with my Dusty Concord and just kind of apply it pretty much the same places I applied the Dusty Concord, and just kind of pull it out. And the two colors will mix and layer and create a nice blend for the middle of the flowers. Okay, so there's that. I'm going to leave the centers of those for right now because I don't want the violet to bleed out into the yellow. So next I'm going to work on my leaves. I'm going to start with my lightest color of leaf green, and I'm going to start with my shabby shutters, and I'm pretty well just going to put a light layer of shabby shutters on the leaves because that's going to be my base color. So I'm just going to go through here kind of quickly. Make sure you clean off your water brush a little bit so that you don't bleed purple out into your green, because it will dull it down. So I'm just going to go through all of the main leaves right now, and now I'm going to just spread it. I'm not worried about too much about where this is going right now because this is the light layer. And you want to work light to dark with your greens here. Pretty much you always want to work light to dark when you're using the water brush. Sometimes you'll get outside the lines, like I just got outside the line right there. Don't worry about it. It's not too big of a deal. So now I'm going to move on to my next green, which is peeled paint, and it's a little bit darker green. It's not quite as green, it's more of a shadow green, and it's going to kind of be my base layer of shadow on these guys. I'm going to concentrate it mostly where the darkest parts of the leaves would be, any overlap spots. And then I'm going to go back through and activate it just like before. And I'm not spreading this all over the leaf. I'm just kind of hitting the edges with my water brush. And just to spread it and soften it so that it doesn't have like a hard edge on it, like a hard marker edge to it. Okay, so there you can see I got some of the shadows in there. Now I'm going to go back with pine needles, and this is a very vibrant blue-green. When it's activated, it looks like it's going to be a forest green, but it's really a really nice blue-green. So it's going to kind of make the leaves pop out a little bit more. I'm going to concentrate this in the darkest spots. And this is one of the things I've noticed about these distress markers that's kind of fun, though you might want to practice with them just to see how they look once they're activated with water, because sometimes it's surprising what the color really looks like once it's activated with water. So now I'm going to smooth this out. You can see this is more of a brighter sort of Kelly blue-green, and it's going to help give our leaves more of a intense green color, a little bit less yellow-green. So that part's done. Now I'm going to tackle the teacup. I used on my original over here, I used the blue-greens on the teacup. So I'm going to start with the lighter of the two blues, and I'm going to use the tumbled glass. And I'm going to outline all of my areas that are the darkest parts of my teacup, because I'm going to pull this color across into the lighter areas. So I'm just going to put it in the darkest spots. Okay, like that. And then I'm going to take and clean off my water brush. And then I'm going to start over here in the dark spots and activate that paint and pull it over. Or activate that ink and pull it over. I'm going to dry off my brush a little bit right here around my light. Keep drying off my brush and then going back and then making that light spot right there. I'm going to do the same thing down here. Start in the dark spots, pull it towards the light spots, dry off my brush, do the other side, and pull towards the middle. Like that. Okay, so that's that part. I'm going to move to the saucer now. I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to start with my places that are going to be the darkest and put my ink down there, and then I'm going to pull that ink to the places that are going to be lightest. So you can clean off your brush at any time so that you can pull a lighter amount of ink. Be careful about taking a clean brush and putting it back in the dark areas, because it will cause you to end up with a light spot that you may not want, and those are kind of hard to correct like I have right here, but I think I can fix that here in a minute. Now what I'm going to do up here on the teacup again, I'm going to take my broken china and I'm going to go back in and hit in a little bit more vibrance in the blue and kind of darken up some of the darker areas. So I'm going to go back pretty well, not exactly the same spots as before, just maybe a little bit less, but the same general areas, like that. And then Now I'm not going to spread this out as much. I'm going to spread it out a little bit less than I did the last time, because I want my darks to stay concentrated to the places where the color would be a little bit deeper. Okay, so there's that. I'm going to do the same thing down here. And over here. Alright, now back to my area over here where I have a little mistake. What I'm going to do to fix that is I'm going to take my acrylic block, I don't know if you guys can see it, I'm going to color on it with my tumbled glass, and I'm going to pick some of that ink up, and I'm going to go back in and kind of go over this area and hopefully be able to spread it out and kind of fix that. I didn't want to put the marker directly on the paper because I felt like it would be a little bit too dark. Now I'm going to go to the dark spots on my saucer with the broken china, and I'm going to spread it out because this is the shadow side of the saucer, so all of that would be pretty dark over there. And then underneath the saucer I'm going to do the same. I'm just going to use the broken china on the underneath side of the saucer. Okay, so now to add one last little bit of depth to the teacup and a little bit of shadow, I'm going to take my pumice stone that I mentioned earlier. And you don't have to use pumice stone. I could use like the purple or the green, and that would work just as well to create shadows in there, but I'm just going to use the pumice stone because it's a little more neutral. And I'm going to go in and just the places where the flowers are going to cast a shadow on the teacup. Okay, so I finished adding the shadow underneath with the pumice stone, and I activated it with the water brush. And then I went ahead and put a shadow underneath here with the pumice stone. I did the same thing, just kind of went around it with the water brush and dried it between layers till it blended out. And then I used some scattered straw on the outside to finish off the edges and give it kind of a little bit of a glow. At this point, if you wanted to, you could kind of go back in one last time and add a little bit of definition underneath a few things. I might go back in with just the marker, and this time I might not activate it with the brush, just kind of right up underneath things where I want to sharpen my edges a little bit, or my shadows underneath. I'm going to go in with my marker and super carefully kind of darken a few places in just to give it a little bit more definition and depth. If you get too carried away with something, you can always activate it. Brush straight out, here we go. Just be careful, because if you put water on dry stuff, it might pull some of that out of there and make it lighter than you want it to be, so be careful. Let's go back in and kind of finish that up, and then I got one spot right here that I missed that should be purple, so I'm going to put a little bit of ink in there, and that's it. It's done. You can see how that worked out. Now it's ready to use on a card. I could cut it out with a die cut. I have lots of options now, so now I can go use it on a card. I hope you found this tutorial helpful, and I can't wait to see what you guys create with your distress markers. Bye!